boy Luke back for another NFL DFS video, this time for our Week 9 core picks. We're going to go position by position, talking about my favorite plays in a variety of different salary ranges for each position. These are going to be the foundational pieces that I build a majority of my lineups around this week. Of course, all of our picks are going to be data-based as always. Getting to this part of the year, we're starting to get a really good idea of some of the target shares for each of these teams. A lot of the injury situations that have opened up also give us quite a bit of value on the slate. So overall, going to be a great week to target in DFS. So without any more delay, let's hop right into it. First off with our quarterbacks here for Week 9. Starting off quarterback at number 6, we have Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. I like his price tag there at $6,700, one of the cheapest we've seen him all year, despite him on a run of really good play. The only reason he didn't put up a large score last week is because they scored 4 touchdowns on the ground there against the Lions. So Jalen Hurts, the stat line really doesn't tell the whole story. He was extremely efficient last week, was passing at a good clip, had over 70 rushing yards as well. And now that he has a soft matchup against this Chargers team in a very high total game, he's definitely somebody I'm going to be targeting. The only reason he isn't higher on this list is that he lacks a stud option to use as a stacking option. Somebody like Devontae Adams at Tyreek Hill, that kind of thing, which would really make him one of the best plays on the slate if he did. You could still match him up with a Dallas Goedert. You can go to a Devontae Smith and hope that they get you 100 yards and a touchdown or that kind of thing. But I'm comfortable using him in one-offs as well. At number 5, we have Patrick Mahomes, somebody who's in an even better game environment than that Philadelphia Chargers game between the Packers and the Chiefs. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers on one side, Patrick Mahomes on the other. Really like the price tag there on Patrick Mahomes. He's not the most expensive quarterback on the slate as he usually is. Again, has been in a little bit of a downturn of play, hasn't really been putting up those eye-popping numbers that we've seen in years past, but still remains one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that just should tell us that we're looking into it a little bit too much. We expect so much greatness from Patrick Mahomes. When he doesn't go out there and get you 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every week, you start to question things. In reality, he's still been very serviceable on the fantasy side of things, and obviously against the Packers in such a high-scoring game, should have another excellent outing. At number 4, we have Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders at $5,900. This isn't the best matchup on paper against the Giants, but Derek Carr has a very good price tag there in the $5,000 range. Also somebody who's been quietly one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in all of this year. He's averaging over 300 yards passing per game, just under 2 touchdowns a game. Has overall been very good in terms of his efficiency and with his volume. This team has been throwing the ball a ton, has been using backs out of the backfield as wide receivers, using the short game essentially as an extension of the run. And that has continued even after Gruden's departure. And in fact, Derek Carr's numbers have only gotten better as Gruden has left. So I'm projected for 19.7 points. And again, this Giants defense definitely showed out against the Chiefs, kind of showed that they have some teeth. I think Derek Carr at his price tag has more than enough firepower to pay that off. At number 3, we have Aaron Rodgers, the other side of that Chiefs game. Obviously, this game going to be a shootout, so I'm going to try and target both sides. The side that I'm able to stack more often is just this Packers side. You have some options that are a little bit cheaper. You have Devontae Adams, who's my best play on the entire slate at wide receiver. So at $7,500, I like matching him up with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You can go to some of the cheap tight ends that have opened up on that team with the Robert Tonyan injury. Overall, very easy to stack, projected at 21.5 points. Can't go wrong with using Aaron Rodgers this week. At number 2, we have Lamar Jackson at $7,300. I really think that he should be the most expensive player on this slate, especially at quarterback. People like Josh Allen, while they've had great years, Lamar Jackson's completely outshined them. Has been somebody who's gone out, had plenty of rushing upside that we've seen from year to year, but he's having a career year passing. Arguably better numbers in his MVP year. So this matchup against the Vikings should be a relatively high-scoring affair. And while the Vikings have some good names on defense, Everson Griffin will be out with a pectoral injury. They still lit up a ton of points. They lit up a ton of yards as well. So I think it's a little bit overblown, that defense. They've still lit up plenty of fantasy production as well. So at a 22.4 point projection, the only reason he's not number 1, and we'll get to number 1 here in a second with Justin Herbert, is the stacking option. So just like Jalen Hurts, kind of lacks that top-end stack. You know, there's not a Devontae Adams or a Tyreek Hill there. We do have Marquise Brown, who's been pretty good to this point in the year, but again, he's not very consistent. We can't really count on him from week to week. At least he has that top-end upside. So I'm using people like Brown, using people like Mark Andrews, potentially even a Rashad Bateman, who's emerged of late. So I like him there at number 2. But as I alluded to, our favorite quarterback this week is going to be Justin Herbert, a extremely good price tag there at $7,000, by far the cheapest we've seen him for quite some time. Again, the matchup against the Eagles, one of the best on the slate. I have this as the second best game to target. So at a 22.3 point projection, but really makes him stand out from his peers here. On top of just the point per dollar play is the stacking options. We have Mike Williams, we have Keenan Allen. You can go to Austin Eckler or even a Jared Cook. Also some tertiary options like a Guyton you could go to that all have a ton of ceiling. They get a ton of usage in this offense. Nobody throws the ball more than this Chargers team. And as a result, in PPR, which we get here on DraftKings, these guys always tend to pop. So really like the stacks with Justin Herbert, and that's why you find him there at number 1. And now at running back, first off, we have Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys. A decent matchup against this Broncos front, which obviously is now without Von Miller, making them even more susceptible to the run. What I also like about this matchup is that they're going to be without their quarterback most likely. Dak Prescott probably going to be sat for at least one more game. They were very cautious with him, obviously, in the primetime game this week. I do expect that to continue for at least the next week. The doctors at least gave a 3 to 4 week window before he'd be fully back to health. So I think they're at least going to wait till halfway through that window to bring him back at a limited capacity. So Ezekiel Elliott, while he didn't have a massive game with Cooper Rush at quarterback, I do expect that to be the case against a softer defense. Obviously going to be able to run the ball a little bit more here. The Broncos have looked really bad of late. They got off to a hot start with Teddy Bridgewater, but have kind of fallen off the rails. They just lack a good O-line. They lack some wide receivers. They do get Jerry Jeudy back, which is going to help them, but just plenty of guys that are down. Overall, an offense that'll be better in a year or two. But on the other side of things, Ezekiel Elliott, like I said, going to get plenty of touches. I have projected for 21.2 carries right now, 3.4 targets for 3 catches, and that makes him an extremely good play here on this slate. At number 5, we have Myles Gaskin at $5,800. A very good matchup against the Texans team, and pretty much whatever running back is playing against the Texans week to week, you're going to want to have them in fantasy. They're a team that's going to get run over more often than not. I mean, they lost 38-0 last week against the Rams. Actually, I believe they scored something down in garbage time. They made it look a lot closer than it was, but in reality, that was a 5-touchdown beatdown. They completely just laid down at the end and let them score. Myles Gaskin should be a huge beneficiary of this matchup. Teams, when they get ahead against the Texans, tend to run the ball a lot, tend to try and run out the clock, and Gaskin's going to be that guy for them. He's extremely powerful out of the backfield. He can be used as a wide receiver if you need him to. And overall, I have him as a very high floor on the slate, particularly at his price tag, but also a true 25, even 30-point ceiling. Our next up is going to be Austin Eckler, who's extremely expensive. He's also been the best fantasy back of anyone in the NFL to this point, not named Derrick Henry. But with Derrick Henry out for the year, Austin Eckler is seemingly going to be the running back 1 going forward. So good matchup against the Eagles team, obviously. I love going to Justin Herbert at quarterback. And while it might seem a little bit counterintuitive, I don't mind using Eckler in my stacks. This is somebody who has plenty of PPR upside. He's usually catching about 6 or 7 balls in a game where he's really got it going. And he can end up scoring in the red zone as a wide receiver. We've seen that time and time again. Eckler had 6 receiving touchdowns last year, already has 4 to this point of this year. So at a 19.5 point projection, he's a little bit more expensive than I'd like to go to, I will admit. He's not my favorite spend-up option on the slate. We'll have to wait till number 1 to get there. But definitely somebody I'll be using in some of my Justin Herbert stacks. Next up, we have Damian Harris at an even $6,000. Against the Panthers, this should seemingly be a good matchup. They might be without Sam Darnold as well, which would only make that a better situation to target. Harris has gone plenty of workload over these last 4 weeks, seeing over 16 carries per game. He's also gotten plenty of looks out of the backfield and has been very productive with all of those touches. This is an offense that really seems to be coming together. Mac Jones is looking more comfortable week in and week out, and you've seen that with their production and their point production as well. So Damian Harris, somebody who's going to see a lot better production when this team is playing well. So I like him there against the Panthers. Next up, we have Dalvin Cook at $7,700. This Ravens game against the Vikings is going to be a shootout. The Vikings let up a ton of points. They also score a ton of points. So in fantasy, that is going to be an absolute goldmine. My favorite player in this game, aside from Lamar Jackson, is going to be Dalvin Cook, though. This is somebody who's going to get a ton of touches. Last week, even dealing with a little bit of a lingering injury, still got well over 20 touches. And that wasn't even the most competitive game. Now against the Ravens, I expect him to go out, maybe get 20, 25 touches. You can see nearly a 20-point projection right there. And while he is priced up, it's well worth it, in my opinion. He's somebody who even out-projects somebody like an Austin Eckler. He's been the number 1 fantasy back to this point of the year, just based on the matchup alone. At number 1, though, we have Alvin Kamara, and he's my favorite play at running back on the slate, and it's not particularly close. He's the only one who cracks the 20-point projection mark. This matchup against the Falcons is an absolute goldmine. The Falcons have been absolutely atrocious on defense. They've had plenty of injuries to the linebacker, injuries in the secondary, and you've really seen that with opposing production. So Alvin Kamara, somebody who's going to have to shoulder a huge load for this offense, obviously going to be without Jameis Winston for the remainder of the year. Might even be without Taysom Hill for yet another week. Still isn't back to 100%. If Trevor Siemian is at quarterback, Kamara is going to have a massive, massive game. Reason why, obviously, he's going to get plenty of rushes. Has had more rushes this year than any other year in his career. But most off, he's going to get plenty of checkdowns. When you have a young quarterback in there, especially a rookie quarterback, somebody who's, and Simeon's not a rookie, but he's seemingly a rookie in terms of experience, he's going to check the ball down a lot. He's not going to be trying to throw the ball downfield very often. People like Sean Payne are going to try and make it as easy as possible for him, use him more as a game manager. And people that thrive in those situations are these pass-catching running backs. They're going to get an extra 2 to 3 catches a game. And here in DraftKings PPR, that's an extra 4, maybe even 5 fantasy points. This is already somebody who is one of the best fantasy producers in the NFL, but give him an extra 4 or 5 point bump, and he's borderline lockable. He borderline have to roster him. So like him there, $8,200. Obviously, the most expensive running back on the slate, but definitely well warranted in terms of his projection. Next up, we're going to have our wide receivers. First off, we have Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles, somebody I like using with my Jalen Hurts stacks if I end up using one at $5,200. Obviously, a very good matchup against this Chargers team. So we already talked about the matchup. Don't want to go into it too much. But the beauty with Devonta Smith is he shouldn't have to deal with any of the really good defenders on the Chargers. A lot of them are their linebackers, their safeties, that kind of thing. Smith's going to be on the outside dealing with their cornerbacks, which to this point of the year haven't been their bright spot on defense. They've gotten exposed by teams like the Patriots, lesser teams like the Browns, which haven't been very good on offense at all this year. So Devonta Smith could be in for a very good game. Have him projected for 17.7 points, which at his price tag is a very good value. It's over 3x value. And to get over 3x value at the wide receiver position is really what you're looking for. Again, you're not going to be able to project for a ceiling game to game. But if Devonta Smith had a situation where he could go out and have that type of ceiling game, it would be in this type of matchup. Next up, we have Justin Jefferson at $7,500. So one of the stud options I like going to this week. And again, this Ravens-Vikings game, something I expect to shoot out. So Justin Jefferson, obviously going to be a good target here. While Kirk Cousins didn't make my stacking options list, he's a little bit more expensive than we're used to seeing him because of the production of late. Justin Jefferson, right where he should be. Obviously had a little bit of a down week, got injured in the third quarter of his game. But now that he should be back to full health, they're going to give him a few days off this week to give him some rest, I would imagine. I expect him to have a big week against the Ravens. They have Marlon Humphrey out there, which used to be a very scary matchup. But if we take a look at some of the wide receivers that have torched him of late, lesser wide receivers than Justin Jefferson, I'm not so worried about it anymore. You know, sometimes these quarterbacks come and go. They have a good year or two, and then they really fall off. It's definitely the position in the NFL where fall off might happen the fastest. Either that or running back. There's an argument to be made either way. But Justin Jefferson, that matchup doesn't scare me anymore. His skill set is elite. It's second to none in terms of his route running, and I have him projected for a very big week. Next up, we have Marquise Brown on the other side of the ball. So again, somebody I'm using with Lamar Jackson in my stacks. A very good price tag there at $6,000. If you take a look at his production to this point of the year, that price tag doesn't make any sense. This guy should be easily near $7,000. And an 18.8 point projection, he projects as one of the best point per dollar plays on the entire slate. It's well over 3x value, 3.3x. And again, this matchup is almost made from heaven. You don't have Patrick Peterson there in the secondary. While they have a few good safeties over there for the Vikings, Brown shouldn't have to deal with them. He's more of a slot wide receiver. Sure, he gives you that deep play threat every once in a while, but even without that, still projects out for a very good week. Next up, we have Mike Williams of the Chargers. Obviously, my favorite option to use in a stack with Justin Herbert. He's $7,100 this week, which is a little bit more expensive than most people would like him to be. But as a result, going to be overlooked. You're looking at single-digit ownership for Mike Williams, which anytime you get single-digit ownership on somebody with his kind of upside, it makes it an intriguing play in my opinion. This game is going to be a shootout against the Eagles, and at nearly a 20-point projection, I don't think we have to overthink it. One of the best plays on the whole slate. You can use them as a one-off, or you can use them in those stacks. I have no preference at all. Next up, we have Tyreek Hill at $7,900, and Obviously, these top two options, they're slam dunk plays. You guys knew to play them before you came into the week, so we're not going to harp on them too much. But this Packers-Chiefs game, going to be an absolute shootout. We can see 60, maybe even 70 points scored here. These offenses are that prolific. So even at $7,900, you can see Davante Adams is there at $8,200. I'm willing to go to both these guys. And while it would be really hard to fit them both into a lineup, I'm trying to have at least one of these guys in every lineup that I build. I think they have that kind of ceiling this week. One of them is going to go out there and show off, if not both of them. I'm probably going to have lineups with both of them in it as well. I'm looking at right around 60% exposure on both of these players right now, at least for my first builds of the week. There is plenty of value available on this slate because of some of the injury situations that have popped up. And of course, there's going to be even more as the week goes on. If there's any injuries in practice or people that just end up getting benched. So make sure to keep an eye on that. We will have a values video coming out a little bit later on this week to cover some of that stuff when it comes out. Either way, though, really like both of these wide receivers, both projected for well over 22 fantasy points. You can see Davante Adams at a 23 fantasy point projection, which seems crazy, but that's actually less than what he's averaged this year, nearly 25 fantasy points per game. He's been seeing a 43% target share over there in the Packers, which is completely unprecedented. This guy's being targeted more than anybody in the NFL, and it's not even close. Tyreek Hill up there at 37%, so has a little bit of a say of his own there, but then there's a huge drop-off after that to the rest of the league. So really like Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill there. Don't think you can go wrong with either of them. And now for our tight ends to wrap it up. First off, we have Noah Fant of the Denver Broncos. A decent matchup against the Cowboys team here, but really just comes down to price tag for me. He's only $4,400. That is vastly too low of a price tag for the kind of player that he is. Obviously, just projecting for over 15 fantasy points as of right now. He's only scored just over 10 fantasy points per game to this point of the year. A lot of it's been due to injury. He's been questionable for almost every game this year. It's been a little bit hampered. You haven't quite seen the kind of production out of him that we saw from last year, but last week was very productive, looked a lot more like himself. I was watching the game over there on the DirecTV Sunday Ticket. He looked a lot faster, was able to run routes like we saw last year, and I think a lot of that production is going to come back around. So somebody I'm trying to buy back in on early at a very good price tag here. Also in a decent matchup against the Cowboys, which could feature a lot of points. I mean, the Broncos were very efficient on offense this first 3 weeks of the year. Have kind of fallen off since then, but the Cowboys team obviously has let up a ton of points, but has scored a ton themselves. Even with Cooper Rush at quarterback, obviously was extremely impressive there. I like going to Noah Fant at his price tag. Next up, we have Mark Andrews, who is a great stacking option with Lamar Jackson this week. A decent price tag there at $5,500. He is one of the more expensive tight ends on the slate, but well warranted given the type of projection that we have him for. Currently have him projected for 16.8 points. It's a really good matchup against the Vikings just because we have such a high over-under there. Also, a team that lets up plenty of fantasy production to tight ends. So, like going to him as a one-off or with stacks with Lamar Jackson. Next up, we have Jared Cook, who I'm almost exclusively using in my stacks with Justin Herbert. Obviously, Herbert as my number one stacked player of the slate. Gonna have plenty of those. So the matchup against the Eagles is nice. It's also a really good price tag there at $3,300. It allows you to spend up for Justin Herbert, potentially even a Mike Williams or a Keenan Allen as well. And he projects out nicely at 14 fantasy points. To me, I don't necessarily understand this price tag here. He was good last week, scored a touchdown. He scored a touchdown in 4 of his 6 games to this point of the year. Really like him here in week 9 as well. Next up, we have Travis Kelce and even $7,000. He's playing against the Packers this week, and obviously the most expensive tight end on the slate, but anytime you have such a high total, you're going to want to target some of the studs in this game, and Travis Kelce obviously qualifies as such. Somebody who I wouldn't want to stack up with Tyreek Hill at the same time. I think for both of them to get to their ceilings at the same exact time would be a little bit too much to ask for, but to stack up with Travis Kelce and potentially a Davante Adams on the other side of things, now that's a little bit more intriguing. So again, somebody I like given the game environment, and you're pretty much going to like Travis Kelce no matter the matchup, let alone when you're in a 55.5 point over-under game. Next up, we have Kyle Pitts at $5,900, who is going to be a wide receiver 1 for this team now. We have Calvin Ridley, who is not going to be playing due to personal reasons, is taking a little bit of a mental health break, it seems. Kyle Pitts going to be serving as a wide receiver 1 now. He was already seeing wide receiver 2 type of targets, But with Ridley out of the equation, he's by and far the best target on this team. And you've started to see Matt Ryan have a lot more confidence in the young rookie, especially over these last few weeks. The targets have gone from around 5 or 6 targets in a game to 7 to 9 over these last 3 starts. And this matchup against the Saints isn't ideal, at least from a wide receiver perspective. But Kyle Pitts, again, technically a tight end, going to at the very most be playing in the slot. Should be avoiding people like Marcus Lattimore, who are a very tough matchup on the outside, and should be able to go against some of those softer linebackers. So again, no Calvin Ridley, projected for 17.2 points. Not going to do much better than that here at the tight end position. But first off, at number 1, we have Dallas Goedert at $4,500. I don't necessarily understand the price tag here. It seems just a tad bit low in my opinion. Very good matchup here against the Chargers team. No more Zach Ertz up there in Philly. And at a 16.4 point projection, not just somebody I'm using with my Jalen Hurts stacks, somebody I'd love using as a one-off. Just going to get a ton of targets. We're expecting him to get 7.5 targets in this game, right around 6 catches. Even if he doesn't end up scoring a touchdown, could very well end up paying off that price tag. This guy's also been an absolute machine in the red zone. By far, Hurts' his favorite target when he goes to pass the ball there. And while we haven't seen a ton of touchdowns from Jalen Hurts through the air, he's due for some regression in that category. He's been extremely efficient through the air. They've just ran the ball a ton when it gets down into the red zone. And while it's been effective to this point of the year, there's no way those numbers continue into the future. They're running at nearly an 80-20 split. And when teams start to stack the box against them in the red zone, I do expect them to run some play action and take advantage of that. So I like Dallas Goedert here, especially if he goes out there and gets you a touchdown like I think he's due for any week now. All we've got for our week 9 core picks, guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got as your favorite stack this week. Obviously for me, I really like the Charger side of things. You've got Justin Herbert, you've got Jared Cook, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, just a whole plethora of options to use in that stack. But go ahead and let me know who you've got down in the comments. As always, I really appreciate all of your support here on the channel. If you guys haven't already gotten a chance to like the video, if you haven't gotten a chance to subscribe to the channel yet, highly recommend you guys go ahead and do so. We're going to have even more football content coming throughout the week. That includes our value picks, our fades and sleepers. Of course, our Sunday live stream we do every week. It's going to be at 9 a.m. this time around. I will be going to the Champions Tour golf tournament on Sunday, also on Friday. So going to be doing the stream a little bit earlier so I can get to that golf tournament, but going to be going over player pool, ownership projections, going to be going through game theory, some lineup construction stuff, and maybe we'll make a few lineups together on stream as well. So make sure to bring any questions that you guys have, whether it's for season-long fantasy or for DFS, to that live stream, and I'll see you guys then. But good luck with all of your lineups for this week. Make sure to keep an eye out for all of the NFL content to come, in peace.